be talking about emerging certifications from Cisco, specifically the DevNet certifications. And we'll take a closer look at the DevNet certification for DevOps, the need for it, what's the easiest way for you to achieve it, what kind of hands-on practice or where do you go get started for these kind of certifications. And then eventually, what should be your final goal when it comes to these certifications, right? So my name is Jagpreet Singh. I have been a Cisco instructor and a Cisco solutions architect for like Leela mentioned at the start, for about 10 plus years. I am a Cisco DevNet associate and a Cisco DevNet professional certified, with my professional certification being focused on enterprise networking. So broadly speaking, these certifications can be classified in two different roles, right? The infrastructure and the app development and application management. Now, the differentiating line between these two categories is very quickly disappearing, right? So a network engineer is expected to make sure that the application requirements are being met and the application lifecycle is also being maintained. Similarly, a classical DevOps engineer now is expected to know how the networking and how the application, probably hosted in the cloud somewhere, is able to connect to the on-premises network back to where the actual consumers of those applications might be sitting, right? And nowadays, those consumers are probably sitting at home, accessing these applications remotely. So the dividing line between those two professions is disappearing. So the things that we'll focus on today is the current status. What's the state of automation today? Again, focused on networking, but we'll go a little bit wider or broader in that approach. And then what role does programmability have to play, especially when talking about large customers? What are the new roles that are emerging for network engineers? Right? How can you transition from your existing network specialist, solutions architect, networking engineer role to these new roles? What are the key certifications that can take you to these new roles? And how should you start taking those exams? Right? So the how to do that part will be covered under the understanding the DevNet certifications, and then we'll take a closer look into 300-910, which is the DevNet certifications for DevOps, right? So I will probably end up switching from my slide deck to a browser and then take you to Cisco's DevNet website and talk a little bit deeper about the DevOps certification and what are the key courses or key areas of technology that you should be focused on while preparing for that exam. Okay, so having said that, let's go straight into it. So like I said, apps and infrastructure, they were historically managed separately, right? Two different roles. You have the DevOps team building the applications, patching the applications, maintaining the applications, and then finally, when their role was done, terminating those applications or migrating the application data to a newer version, etc. And then the infrastructure team was responsible or is responsible for making sure that the consumers of that application can access the application seamlessly, right? So if you're trying to access Facebook.com, a network or infrastructure engineer's role is to make sure that the web server is accessible over the internet, and the load balancing across different web servers that might be hosted in different data centers that Facebook owns is happening correctly, the resolution is happening correctly, and the overall experience when accessing that data is top-notch. Whereas the application engineer's responsibility is to make sure that the application itself is up and running. But that bridge or that gap is slowly closing, primarily because the networks are becoming more and more automated. So the classical tools that the DevOps engineers were using to develop their applications are now being used to manage and deploy automation scripts, tasks, for the network as well, right? For the infrastructure as well. So if the developer was using Jenkins for their CI/CD, now you can take that same capability and apply that to a software-defined network, where you are now automating that network through a centralized CI/CD pipeline, right? So you're making sure that your automation scripts are up to date. You're managing your automation scripts as if you're managing and maintaining an application server. So the skill set from the application side of the world is now transitioning to the infrastructure side of the world. And similarly, now with applications being hosted literally anywhere, in the cloud, on an edge device, for a lot of IoT applications, might be hosted on a router at the edge of your network, or maybe on your core switch. So with the application hosting transitioning to multiple platforms, AWS, Azure, Google, on-premises, on a router, on a switch, right? You can run an entire wireless LAN controller on a single access point now. So with the application hosting transitioning to anywhere, it's very important for the typical DevOps engineer to learn and understand how the network automation works. How does the network work? And then how can you automate it? And now with the invent of software-defined networking across different vendors, it's become easier for the DevOps engineer, for the application engineer, to understand how network automation works. They might not have complete visibility into how the network itself is operating, but they can understand how to automate it, right? How to put those pieces together. Now, with these with these lines of segmentation disappearing fast, what Cisco's done is they've identified where the business need is, what the technology need is, and which job roles are those two requirements creating, right? So like we talked about earlier, businesses are growing. More businesses are transitioning to a cloud business model, and they don't stick with one cloud typically, right? They spread their applications across Google, Azure, Amazon. Speed and agility is the need of the hour. Users or consumers of these applications are not stationary. They're not accessing these applications from a central location somewhere. They're all over the place, right? And finally, you need operational efficiency. If there is a problem in your network, you need to be able to identify that fast, and you need to be able to fix it even faster once you've identified it. And to keep up with all of this, you need automation in your network. And one of the key buzzwords that I'm sure anybody on this meeting has probably heard is infrastructure as a code, right? Being able to use or being able to offer infrastructure as a service to be consumed through an automation script. And a great example of this is how Terraform works, right? So Terraform is specifically not just Terraform the language, but a service, for example, what HashiCorp offers through their Terraform suite is being able to automate your cloud networks, or in some cases, even your on-premises infrastructure for application hosting across all different clouds. Being able to migrate application from one cloud to another, not having to worry about how AWS works, how Azure works, or how the on-premises solution works. Maybe you're running ESXi on your on-premises hypervisor. Maybe you're running Microsoft Hyper-V. Maybe you're installing things bare metal on a simple Cisco UCS or IBM server, right? You don't want to deal with the hassle of all of these different consoles, all of these different platforms, and how they would work individually. What you want to worry about is just a single tool to be able to deploy applications, configure infrastructure, do the underlying networking, all from a single pane of glass, right? So there are solutions out there. For example, Cisco has its Intersite solution, which integrates with HashiCorp Terraform, lets you automate workloads on all three clouds, three of the best known ones, and then also the on-premises solution. So that's what the technology is headed to. right? I as a networking services provider do not need engineers who can configure the Cisco UCS manager alone, or who know how to configure a Cisco Nexus switch, right? I now need somebody who understands all of that, but can use tools like HashiCorp Terraform to deploy workloads, automate the underlying networking on premises and also in AWS. Right? So infrastructure as a code, automating as the business grows is the need of the hour. And now, if you're creating automation scripts, you're essentially creating software to manage, deploy, do the whole lifecycle management for your network. So in order for you to create this software, continuously update it, make sure that it's patched, make sure that there's no security vulnerability in that software, because this is a powerful piece of software. It's managing and deploying your entire network. For that, you need to start implementing DevOps tools and then DevOps processes to maintaining the software for your network automation. And that's where you need to learn things like the CI/CD pipeline of continuous development and continuous patching of the software so that it's up to speed, right? It's up to speed with your scale requirement. It's up to speed with the business requirement, right? In other words, a self-serve network operations, right? Which is ready for consumers anywhere and which is ready for the application being hosted across multiple cloud networks. Now, what all of these requirements generate are new jobs, right? So some of them are, a typical one is a network automation engineer, which can come, somebody who can come in, look at the network, and then decide what type of automation tools are needed in the network in order to enhance or make the scale out process, the new site rollout process more efficient, right? More seamless. And how do you automate your day two operations, your day end network operations? How do you easily track down issues, report them to the right stakeholders, and then figure out how to fix them? And preferably fix them through the automation script. Right. And then further, you've got the network automation developer, somebody who's creating these scripts in the first place, looking at the entire setup. Right. You've got the IoT architect, cloud automation engineer, like I said, using tools like Ansible and Terraform for automating networks across different clouds and then connecting them back to the on-premises network. Right. Being able to work with software-defined networks from different vendors, and how do those integrate with the cloud native networking? How do those integrate with the on-premises customer data center networking or their brick and mortar office networks, right? And then, of course, if you're creating all of this software, you need a DevOps engineer just to maintain it, and then, of course, you need to make sure that it's secure when you're utilizing it. So you need to do security operations on the software as well. So in fact, 34% of all IT roles, and this is a survey done by Cisco, but 34% of all IT roles will require skills that can be addressed by one of these Cisco DevNet certifications, right? The world no longer needs somebody configuring the router or the switch through its CLI anymore, right? Unless you're doing it for small operations. But if you're looking to deploy stuff for large enterprises across different platforms, then network automation is the need of the hour. Okay. So DevNet certified technical engineers, that's the number that Cisco is looking to target by 2024, which is very possible. So many of Cisco certified engineers have already taken at least the DevNet associate exam. and clear it, right? So that is definitely not an understatement. Okay, now some of the roles, or the two most prominent roles that have already started to be filled. One of them is the site reliability engineer, right? So the site reliability engineer is typically the person's there to use the automation tool set and reduce the segmentation in the network, right? To make sure that that specific site is not only up and running, but also the software being used at that site is up to speed, right? It's patched properly. If there are new enhancements that are being released, they need to be added to that software, and a new release has to be pushed out, right? The main goal is to make sure that that specific site or sites are in a stable environment at that given point in time and also in the future. So the key roles that they need to have, or the key skill set, are automation tools like Python, Ansible, Ruby on Rails, if they know that, and of course the standard Linux and SOAPs and API understanding, right? And also being able to containerize all of this effort. So need to know things like Docker. And if you're moving those containers to a cloud, then you need to know Kubernetes, right? So these are some of the key skill sets that an SRE or a site reliability engineer must possess. Similarly, another growing role are cloud engineers, right? So being able to implement infrastructure across different clouds, right? Improve the DevOps scaling process. So how soon are we releasing new code? Organizations would typically have multiple cloud engineers, right? So the idea there is to, how do you consolidate that effort, right? Do I need somebody focused on AWS and Azure and Google, or can I have one DevOps, Cisco DevNet DevOps certified engineer who can create a tool or work with existing tools to help deploy and maintain workloads across different clouds from that centralized tool without being a hardcore expert in just Google Cloud, for example, right? Do we really need somebody who can do that? Okay, so the key technology sets here are things like AWS, Azure, knowing the basics of those clouds, understanding their APIs so that you can integrate your third-party tool with them, and then knowing containerization. How do you scale workloads in these clouds, right? And of course, knowing Git, right? And we'll talk about Git in just a few seconds, right? So to enable the modern workforce, you have Cisco DevNet certifications, right? So combine the world of the infrastructure engineer with the world of the software developer. And now let's understand those certifications. So Cisco broadly classifies its certifications into three different categories. There's the engineering certification, which has the typical CCNA, CCNP, Cisco certified specialists. That's a new category if you weren't aware, right? And then there's of course CCIE, right? That's the certified internet network expert for any specific domain. So the domains are enterprise, security, service provider, collaboration, and data center. And then within each of these domains, there are specialist certifications. So for example, in the enterprise domain, you can do a specialist certification for SD-WAN or STA, or in collaboration, you could do it for the call manager or the Cisco Unified Communications Manager. You have one for the UCCX and so on. So you can do specialist certifications, you can do professional level certifications, and then expert level certifications. Now, similar to that, there are the DevNet certifications. You have the DevNet Associate, the DevNet Professional, and then the new one, the DevNet Specialist, and then the new one, which is not mentioned on this slide, but was recently released, is the DevNet expert, right? So that's equivalent to a CCIE, but with software skills. All right. And what are the different domains that you can do these certifications in? Of course, there's enterprise automation and programmability. There's security automation programmability, service provider, collaboration, data center. Right. And one of these specialist certifications is the DevOps certification. And I'll talk about that more in just a second. And other than this, there's security. So in security, you have CyberOps, right? That's specific specialist certification in security, right? So compliance certifications and typical CyberOps certification, which might be different from typical network security certification. So network security would include certifications on things like perimeter security, like firewalls, IPS, IDS solutions, proxy solutions, and then within the network security, like ICE, right? Stealth Watch, so on. But with CyberOps, we're talking about a completely different approach. Okay. We're talking about making sure that the network meets compliance requirements and so on. All right. Now, you can draw parallels between the traditional engineering certification and the new DevNet certification. For example, the DevNet Associate is very similar to the CCNA. The key difference is the DevNet Associate is focused on software development and network programmability, with the person taking the exam has to be familiar with the basics of Cisco hardware and Cisco software and the actual Cisco solution, right? So you're being tested on network programmability, your understanding of APIs, and how would you implement automation using things like Ansible and Python. But in order to implement those, you need a basic understanding of what the Cisco hardware and software solutions are. And CCNA, it's the opposite, right? CCNA is testing you on the actual Cisco solution, and then you need to be aware of programmability and network automation. So the two certifications are complementary to each other, right? In fact, if you're just starting out your journey, then my recommendation would be to take both these exams and then decide which certification path you'd like to choose. If you are somebody who has 5 to 6 or even more years of experience with Cisco solutions and Cisco products, then you should start looking into taking the DevNet Associate and then follow that track, right, for future growth and future opportunities. Because like I said, there's very few large enterprises or large service providers or Cisco partners, or in fact Cisco themselves, who are looking for people who do things the old way, right? Design and lay out a network one by one, piece by piece, brick by brick. Now, if you're looking for especially a senior level position, you need to be familiar with how network automation and programmability works. How does DevOps works in terms of creating a new piece of software, testing it, finalizing the testing, rolling it out into production, continuously patching it, continuously updating it, and so on. Right. Okay, so there is the DevNet Associate, the DevNet Professional, and then the DevNet Specialist examinations. Now, in order for you to be a DevNet Professional, you need to take 2 exams. One of them is the core exam, the DevNet Core, which takes you through the basics of software development, right? Basics of CI/CD pipelines, basics of Ansible, Python, Kubernetes, Docker, Terraform. And once you take the DevNet Core exam, you then have to take one of the specialist examinations. And that's how you can become a DevNet Professional. So can you take all the specialist examinations and then have, 8 different DevNet Professionals? Yes. Yes, it's just like CCNP. Like you had CCNP, collaboration, security, enterprise, and so on. In fact, even CCNP has changed this model. There's the CCNP core exam, and then you go take one of the specialist exams to be a CCNP in that specific specialization. All right. So the specialization that we're talking about today is the DevOps, DevNet Specialist DevOps specialization, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But these are all the specialist exams, the associate and the professional examination. Now, industry-wide, the skills that you need to start prepping on for any of these DevNet exams are software design and deployment. So what are SDKs, what are APIs, Python, right? Deployment, so understanding what virtual machines are, what containers and microservices are, what do we mean by serverless, right? How does application testing and security vulnerability assessment work? Then, of course, the second big category is DevOps or net DevOps, which means using tools like Git. So Git, as you might already know, is a cloud-based tool for version control. You can upload your script, your entire piece of software to Git and keep updating it. And Git can give you version 1, version 2, version 3. It's all cloud hosted. So anybody across the world wanted to use your software, they get the latest version from Git and deploy it and execute it, right? CI/CD is a pipeline mechanism which walks you through how to develop and roll out new pieces of software, and then how also to do day-end operations for it. Virtualization, multi-cloud, application orchestration using Kubernetes or using other tools. And then, of course, domain-specific tooling, right? Ansible, Terraform, Cisco's NSO, and model-driven programmability. So these are the three high-level categories that you should start reading up on and learning about if you need to take these examinations. Right. Now, the DevNet Associate exam, for example, focuses on software development and design, understanding and using APIs, Cisco platforms, application development and how does security tie into that, and then infrastructure and automation. And finally, with networking fundamentals, right? So it does ask you how routing or switching would work in a typical environment, right? So it's not completely detached from the Cisco platforms and the Cisco solutions. Right? And now, in order for you to learn more about the DevNet Associate examination and where can you get started, the first place to visit would be developer.cisco.com. And I'm going to actually go there in just a second once we go deeper and talk about DevOps. So developer.cisco.com is where you can look at the entire tree and where you can decide which specific application to, or which specific exam to take, where do you start learning things. And when you're ready for it and you want to go through an entire 4-day, 5-day course that Cisco offers, that's where Netcom is present to help you, right? To have a Cisco certified instructor walk you through the entire 5-day course for specific certification with hands-on lab practice, and then finally workbooks to practice before you actually go take the exam. Okay, now speaking of the DevOps examination, so the place where you go to is developer.cisco.com. I'm just going to take you there. This is the high-level breakup of the DevNet DevOps solution and practices using Cisco platforms exam. That's the entire name for it, and there's the exam code for it. So 20% is the CI/CD pipeline, right? How do you use tools like Jenkins, Puppet, Chef to deploy, maintain, operate these applications, right? How do you package an application for different platforms? Maybe your application needs to be deployed on a virtual machine in an on-premises data center somewhere, or it needs to be deployed as a Docker container for microservices or Kubernetes containers, Linux containers. So how do you package your application for all of these different platforms and hypervisors and then deploy them successfully? How do you deliver them, keep patching them, and keep delivering new updates? Right. Number 3 is automating the infrastructure. How do you make sure that when your application is deployed, the underlying infrastructure is all automated for it? Right? It has the right network access. If it's deployed in Azure or AWS somewhere, how will the consumers of that application access it? How do you deal with AWS networking? How do you deal with on-premises networking? So on. And that leads us to point number 4, cloud and multi-cloud. Right. Number 5 is day and operations. How do you do logging, monitoring, and metrics for any application that's deployed anywhere? And then, of course, security is a key piece of any examination that you might take in all of these courses. So number 6 is about security, right? And we'll go deeper into this in just a second. But before I do that, so the best place for you to get started is developer.cisco.com. And in fact, I'm going to end my slideshow right now. Go back here. And move this over here. And let's go full screen. So I'm currently on developer.cisco.com, right? And I'm looking at the DevOps operations examination. And if I were to expand the CI/CD pipeline for the first 20%, you can see that there's, the typical tools which are used in this pipeline: Jenkins, Drone, Travis CI, right? How does the CI/CD pipeline work? What are the sequence of events, right? What do you do when there are code-based failures, pipeline issues, tool incompatibility, right, and so on? How do you manage issues, including when there is no API, a broken API, when there's a broken tool chain? How do you roll out libraries, right? So, and then on the right-hand side, they show you study material, right? So for this first section, unfortunately, there's no open study material available where you can just start reading up on stuff. But if you go to option number 2, packaging and application, packaging and delivery of these applications. So this goes over how do you containerize an application, how do you use multiple microservices, and so on. So there are a few 1-pager, 2-pager documents that get you started with Docker features, microservices, Kubernetes. How does that work? So under automating infrastructure, you'll go through things like Ansible, Puppet, Terraform, Chef, right? How do you use automation in the CI/CD pipeline? What do we mean by infrastructure as a code? How do you get started with infrastructure as a code? How does that tie back into Cisco platforms? So introduction to Ansible is available on developer.cisco.com. It's very basic, but it gets you started. Right? And similarly, you can expand the others and see what are the deeper topics. So cloud and multi-cloud talks to you about Kubernetes. How do you deploy a Kubernetes cluster? How do you deploy that in AWS? How do you deploy that in Azure? And how do you leverage that to scale your application? And then, of course, logging walks you through day and operations, right? Integrating it with tools like WebEx Teams. So if there's a problem that occurs in the network or in your application, it's automatically updated to WebEx Teams. So that API integration, that Python script to do that API integration is something that you should have a lot of hands-on experience with. And then finally, security, right? So how do you integrate security solutions into your entire DevOps process? Now, as you can see on the right, the study material is scarce out there, right? There's enough to get you started on developer.cisco.com, but not that much. And by the way, if you're looking for other certifications, you just go back to the certification track, and that'll show you all the certifications that you could take. So under the specialist certifications, under professional, and then DevNet Expert is just brand new, right? Released a few weeks ago, and that's really the holy grail, for the lack of a better expression, of what you should be targeting in the next year or year and a half. All right. So once you're done taking these examinations, or sorry, once you decide to take these examinations, you come to developer.cisco.com, learn more about the key topics, and the next step that you do is go sign up. Go sign up for one of the 5-day, 4-day courses, which are, these are Cisco official courses taught by a Cisco certified instructor, walking you through each of the things that we just talked about for the DevOps examination, right? And with that, thank you so much for listening in. And I'm going to try and hand this back to Leela.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, as always, I feel like you've just touched the tip of the iceberg on everything that you could teach us. We are going to have a question and answer session in just a few moments. While you are getting all your questions into the questions panel, we're going to hear from Eliza Singh, and she's going to introduce some of our upcoming webinars and promotions. Oh, looks like you were able to. Did I just pass you the presentation rights after you took the presentation rights?
Yeah,
Oh,
you passed me the
wonderful.
presentation rights, and I snatched upon them. Yeah.
She's going to let us know about some related webinars and upcoming promotions that are related to today's topic. So go ahead and take it away.
My Q&A starts right now, because
yes,
I don't get to talk to Jagpreet, because I have written emails to the ops team to please get in touch with Jagpreet, and I cannot get him. I don't know how busy he is, but I never get to get in touch with him. So Jagpreet, I have a couple of questions, and I promise when I say couple, I will only ask 2. You have okay. This cannot be counted for as a question though. So you have a sore throat today?
Kind of. Yeah, I have it all year round.
Okay, okay. So I'm going to ask you like very, very simple questions. Mostly, stupid by your standard, but I'm going to ask you simple questions, so you don't have to talk very much. Okay. I remember you were talking about so many different technologies. You were talking about Ansible. You were talking about Puppet. You were talking about Kubernetes. I know Ansible and Kubernetes is also part of Red Hat. I know you were talking about multi-cloud. You were talking about AWS networking and so on and so forth. I wanted to understand, and thank you so much for taking us to developer.cisco.com. Did you know that I did not know about that site? I'm going to check it out today. But when you talk about all of these technologies, and when you take that 4-day or 5-day course, either I start with the associate level course, or if I start with the professional level course, based on my experience that I have in automation and so on and so forth, would you recommend learners to, because this would only give them an overview or an introduction, but truly to get into that expert level of DevNet? Do you think I should probably go for some foundational courses, maybe like an Ansible course from Red Hat, maybe like a cloud practitioner course from AWS? I'm just asking, for my sorry.
Oh no, yes, that's actually a very good question. So if you go through an entire course focused on those solutions, which offers you hands-on practice, which you otherwise might not be getting in your day-to-day job, then absolutely, that's also a great place to start, to go through those primary courses, especially if you're new to things like Terraform, Ansible. And it's fine. Some people are also actually new to just basic Linux, right? So and that's understandable. You might be just starting out in your journey to learn scripting and to learn automation and to learn all these multiple clouds. So if you're focused on those specific those solutions, they'll help you learn the solution or learn the topic. Also, get you the much needed hands-on practice that you need, right? Because most of these examinations are theoretical today, unlike Cisco's engineering examinations, which have labs incorporated into them. These examinations, they're still new, they're still developing, so there will probably be more and more labs added to them. But there's no replacement for hands-on learning. So if somebody can sign up and go through an Ansible course and get some hands-on practice, build Ansible playbooks from scratch, there's no replacing that experience for sure.
Yeah. Okay. You know, I know that Red Hat gives out some free courses as well. Probably could start from there. Those are like, you know, overview courses for 4 5-hour courses. You don't really get labs with them, but yeah, foundational courses. Yeah, I could probably start on that too. Okay, I'm going to ask you my second question. You know, not take too much time. So I actually had a customer just recently come to us who was going for the professional level certification in DevNet, and they asked me this question, and I didn't have an answer to this because they asked me about DevNet in WebEx, the automation in WebEx, and then they asked me about DevNet in the IoT landscape also. And they wanted to ask me that out of these two, not out of these two courses, out of the entire professional level certification, should they take these specializations? There were two people, as a matter of fact, both wanted 2 different courses, both different kind of specialists. Like, should I take the specialization first, or should I go for the core first? I mean, if I was to take the exam, what would you recommend that I take first? I mean, not me personally, because, you know, I shouldn't take any exam, but, you know, those people.
Well, right. So that's a good question. That's so let's assume that these two are individuals who are working with those solutions day in and day out. That's why they want to go through those specialist examinations in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So there's no order in taking these examinations. You don't have to take the core before you take the specialist to be a DevNet professional. You could take the specialist and then do the core afterwards, and then still be certified as a DevNet professional. So if you're somebody who's working on Cisco WebEx and your organization, since WebEx is now all cloud-based, right, and your organization wants you to maybe help develop an application which uses these cloud native WebEx functionalities and builds them into or knits them into the company's website, right? So that you can have agents using the WebEx cloud contact center to be able to answer chats on a website, right? Can I help you? Kind of a pop-up on a website. People click on yes, and they start chatting with an agent. At the back end, that's actually using the WebEx cloud infrastructure, and your company wants you to knit that into the website and use the WebEx cloud contact center for that same purpose. So it makes sense for somebody like that to go through the WebEx specialist certification first, and then take the core certification afterwards, because the core certification is mostly focused on basic automation, basic Kubernetes, basic containerization, and so on. So that might be helpful to get you the professional level certification, but the specialist track might get you to your goal in your job faster, right? But if you're somebody who's just doing or taking the exams because you want to get started on this journey, then I'd recommend taking the core exam first, because that helps you build the fundamentals to then take one of the specialist examinations.
That is such a wonderful answer, and I wish I knew that last week. But, thank you so much. I have one last question, just one. I promised to, but then, I'm a greedy person. I'm sorry. One last question. So the entire automation space, I could go on YouTube and there's so many different people talking about, and you see all of these various videos talking about DevNet. People are coming teaching stuff on DevNet, and a lot of people go and they take these 1 hour, 2 hour trainings and so on and so forth. And sometimes they come and they join the class as well, and they come with some prior knowledge. Sometimes they don't come at all. So I wanted to be able to understand the way Cisco has designed this entire DevNet certification path, with the associate level exam and then the professional level exam, and now you were talking about the Holy Grail, which was the expert level exam. What was the idea behind it? Like how did they conceptualize this entire DevNet landscape?
Right. So that's the bigger question, right? And that's just not Cisco. That's other vendors as well. The whole industry is now moving towards software-defined networks, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is to be able to scale at a very fast pace, and
Hence
you
the
can't do
DevOps
that
and
with
all of that.
correct, right? And you can't do that with the traditional way of implementing things, right?
Mhm.
So we started with the typical engineering tracks. Then you had software-defined networking, where there are different vendors offering different software-defined networking solutions, either on premises, in the campus, in the WAN, in the data center, or in the cloud, right? With there being different clouds. And now with automation, since there are applications living everywhere, and there are networks, different hypervisor, different container solutions that you need to deal with, you need a way to be able to do that all centrally without being dependent on either the cloud native or hypervisor native or on-premises switch or router native features and functionalities, right? I don't need 10 different experts in 10 different technologies. I just need 3 or 4 people who can do this all centrally by automating it through maybe an Ansible playbook or a Terraform script, right? So the entire industry is leading that way. So going forward, in fact, I think we're not at the beginning, but we're already 20% into this trend, and we'll be in the deep end very soon, where all professional services jobs in this industry would be focused on people who know these skills, rather than just knowing, just Cisco solutions or Cisco software products, hardware products, and so on.
Yeah, and I really love that about Cisco, honestly speaking, is that they bring all these different technologies into the entire networking landscape as well. When I go to other vendors, I don't really hear much about other vendors, but Cisco is very agnostic when it comes to it. They have AWS in there, they have Ansible from Red Hat in there,
Right.
and other technologies for that matter, because they understand that all of these technologies live in that landscape and they live together. They cannot live without each other. So they put that into their
Right.
learnings. And I love that about Cisco. That's why,
Yes.
I
Well, one
love
of the
them.
things they did was, and none of the other vendors have done this, is the whole DevNet track or the DevNet team within Cisco is completely independent. They're not part of their learning team. They're not part of any other organization. It's a whole independent organization on its own,
Mhm.
and its sole purpose is to create these certification tracks, create trainings around these, create awareness around these, and just evangelize software development and how that can be used in networking and infrastructure management.
Yes, I believe that too. But thank you for letting me know that it's a completely separate arm of learning DevNet. I'm going to have to find the people and get more insights from them as well. But thank you so much, Jagpreet, for coming in today and conducting this webinar from us. It is always a pleasure to have you come and speak at webinars. Thank you. So to take, as Leela promised everybody, and to go back to doing my job, let me take you through various promotions and so on and so forth, which entail everything Cisco. So at any given point of time, you guys know how to come to our website. It's very simple, www.netcomlearning.com. And if you ever want to get to Cisco, all you have to do is either come into training, select Cisco from here, or from the homepage itself, you also have Cisco over here. Now, once you come into Cisco, what you will be able to see is all the certifications that Jagpreet was talking about today, which is all about DevNet. You have the Cisco Certified DevNet Associate under associate level certifications. Under the professional level certifications, you have Cisco Certified DevNet Professional. And if you want to see all different exams and courses that fall under the professional track, I don't have DevNet in expert level. It only came out a few weeks ago. I think I have to update that. You will be able to see everything right over here. Where is the core exam? What are the courses that go with it? Concentration or a specialization exam, and what are the exams and the courses that go with it. So you will be able to get all your information from Netcom Learning as well. And then, of course, you also have Cisco. Like Jagpreet was telling you, developer.cisco.com to get that foundational learning. And, if you feel that there is part of DevNet that you would like to learn prior to getting into this, what I would say to you is, if you're that interested, is come into our promotions. And once you come to the promotions page, what you will be able to see is free Cisco training. This is a 2-hour training that we provide to various organizations. We're doing it now. We would love to provide it for you as well. And you see DevNet is a part of it. And to completely customize, or as you want it to be customized, it's a 2-hour training. Select your DevNet track right over here, Cisco DevNet track. Let us know what you want to have in the training. We'll get on a call with you. We'll get all your requirements, and you're welcome to participate in this training. We have a small ask from all of you, is these free 2-hour trainings, no matter which track you select. If not DevNet, you want to go for security, data center, enterprise, whatever you want to select. We ask for you to come from an organization and have at least 10 people participate into that training. The training is completely free of charge, no strings attached. You're more than welcome to come and ask us for it. Another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is actually on the Cisco page itself, you will also see that we have subscriptions. Now, under the Cisco Ultimate Learning Subscription, or so we call it, what you will be able to see are different tracks over here. DevNet subscription is also a part of that track. Now, Cisco DevNet subscription, what it gives you. If you want, you can come into this, you can explore more, and it will show you all the courses which are a part of this particular subscription, and if you want to take this subscription. Now, what comes with these courses, for that matter, is not only can you access the digital learning library for Cisco for the entire DevNet track, but you will be able to get unlimited instructor-led training as well on the entire DevNet track. No matter which course you want, you will be able to take it based on the course outline. And that's the Cisco DevNet subscription, the unlimited DevNet subscription, if you choose to take this. Other promotions and webinars that we have, we just had buy one, get one free, but I also wanted to take you to the Netcom Unlimited subscription. Now, you won't see any DevNet courses over there, but there are a few Cisco courses which are a part of our Netcom Plus subscription. Highly affordable, great subscription to get into. All you have to do is just come onto this page, select Cisco, and you will be able to see all different courses which are part of it. And you want to take care of all of these courses, you're more than welcome to get into it. Not saying that you will be able to learn DevNet out of this, but it's something to explore for you guys. what's the harm in it? Other resources that we have, you always have your success stories, you have your blogs, but sometimes I do hear people saying that, hey, I want to see the entire Cisco landscape and training and certifications and what these things do. And where will they get me? So at that point of time, you have the Cisco ebook on our Cisco page. You can download it. Again, no strings attached. You can download the Cisco ebook from here, and it talks about all the tracks in Cisco, including DevNet as well. So you are more than welcome to come and take care of, you can utilize these resources, figure out what you want to learn, how you want to learn it, what is the pace of this particular learning, is it just for you, is it for a team? And definitely take that free training. We're offering it, might as well take it. Other resources, we have other webinars coming up as well. So you would be able to see that under our resources, under webinars. And if it is on a different technology that you want to take a webinar on, we have another one coming on Cisco Unified Communications, which is coming up on January 11th. And you have cloud webinars, security webinars from CompTIA, and so on and so forth. We've had several DevNet webinars. As a matter of fact, Jagpreet led them as well, not DevNet, but Cisco webinars. And you can come over here in the on-demand webinars, and you're more than welcome to watch these webinars from here as well. So, you'll be able to watch them right away, whenever you want, on the go, have your coffee, watch a webinar, whatever you'd like to do. So that's all that I have for the day today. Leela, back to you. And I'm sorry if I took your time.
You're fine. We only have a few questions to get to, so it's great that you asked them. You probably asked what everybody was thinking anyway. And that's probably why we don't have a ton of questions today. Our first one that we have is, what would you recommend as the ideal track to follow towards getting certified?
Right. That's what we talked about with Eliza's question as well. The two websites you want to visit, like Eliza mentioned, are the Netcom Learning track. Check that out and go to developer.cisco.com. Right. If you're new to this, then I would recommend going through the DevNet Associate exam for sure. Right. And then once you go through the DevNet Associate exam, after that, we talked about that example about, do I go through the specialist exams or do I go through the core exam first? So that completely depends upon what your day in and day out job asks of you.
Okay. Sorry, was that that was the end of the answer, right?
Oh, that was it.
I was waiting for more. Okay, our next question is, how important is hands-on practice to be able to take the exams? I think you also touched on this a little bit.
Right. Yes. So I believe it's very important. Like I said, these exams right now don't really test you a lot on hands-on questions. But there are a few, or at least I came across a few practical questions which I would not have been able to answer if I had not done that in either in a lab setup or as part of my job. So if you're just going through basic fundamentals, videos, and reading up on things, that might not be good enough to actually go take any exam above the associate level. You would have to go through some hands-on practice, have experience with some of the tools we talked about earlier today, know how Jenkins and Puppet and Chef and Ansible work, Terraform works, really know how to deploy a Kubernetes cluster. What does that take? How does it operate? What do you do with a Docker container? What are the different features that you can use in a Docker container? How can you use that with the Kubernetes cluster? So getting those hands-on experiences is key to be able to take these exams successfully.
Thank you so much. And it looks like we have one final question before we wrap up today. they want to know, is it just an uphill task for a network engineer?
Right, and that's a great question, and that's also something that Eliza asked earlier. There's just so much, right? So if you've been a network engineer for 6 to 8 years, maybe more, right, and you've not so far had to go through things like software-defined networking, maybe you're an administrator at a company, and these are just not the solutions that your organization has adopted. So you don't have hands-on experience with these solutions, and now you're looking for better opportunities, other opportunities, and you're looking to upskill yourself, right? So when you go through the table of contents for all these examinations, and you look at all of these new terminologies, it could be daunting. I know that when I wanted to take the DevNet Associate exam, a lot of these things were very new to me. I was only familiar with Python and APIs, and everything else was new to me. But it'll just take you a little bit longer. Focus on the fundamentals. If you have to take a dedicated Ansible course or go through a whole bunch of Ansible videos and try and build your own playbooks just to get comfortable on Ansible and how it works, then after that, it starts to get easier, because once you learn one automation language, the other automation languages become easier to comprehend. Right? I would recommend starting with either Node.js or Python, if at all possible, and then learning Ansible and Terraform and other automation languages become easier. Similarly, if you learn how Jenkins works or Puppet or Chef works, then learning the other operations tools also become easier. So it could look like an uphill task, but one thing leads to another. So step by step, you'll eventually get there.
So if I can do it, anybody can do
it. Yes, and it is, it's excellent advice. And Eliza, you're pretty impressive though. So, I'm not sure I could do it. We really appreciate you for joining us. I know that, Eliza mentioned you were not feeling the greatest. You had a sore throat. So I know what that's like. I make, I have to do a lot of talking for my job. So sometimes that's a little rough. So we do appreciate you taking the time and joining us.
Thanks, Lena.
We are going to go ahead now and launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. In addition to today's webinar, we have a lot of informative webinars that are coming up in the future. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to check those out and to register for any of them. We want to thank you all for joining us today. If you do come up with any additional questions, please feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. And we hope you all found today's webinar to be informative. We really look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Also, feel free to spread the love, tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you everyone and have a wonderful day.